Hello everyone, and thank you for attending in the Books Bagels. We really appreciate your hosting us here at the Center City campus. My name is Kavan Hazali. I am a fourth-year PhD student at the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Mechanics. I'm also the Vice President of the Graduate Student Association. First of all, again, thanks a lot for hosting us here. This program is composed of usually two presentations by the motivated students come and talk about their research, but we always encourage the student not only talk about the pure research and plots, also talking about the different source of inspiration they have received during the education and that can contribute in the real research. I was telling Dr. Auth a couple of minutes ago, like 100 years ago, we had the boundary between the science. For example, if you were the physician, you were physician. If you were mechanician, you were mechanician. Nowadays, there is no boundary in the science. 3 days ago, I was in Boston in the conference. That was a group from Johns Hopkins University. They composed from 15 PhD students coming from art department, textile and texture for fabrics, mechanical, physician, to manufacturing the artificial hearts.
Oh, wow.
So this is no more boundary, and we are always encouraging the students come and talk about their new discoveries, the new source of inspiration they have during their life, and make it another motivation for the other generation. Today we are very honored to have Dr. Auth from the clinical, he's the clinical professor and physician assistant department chair here at the Drexel University. To be honest, I didn't get a chance to go through his bio that much, but I will let him to come here and introduce himself.
Sure.
And also the speakers.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Well, I've got the pleasure of introducing two wonderful students who are going to do their presentations today. We're going to introduce each of them, and then they'll each do their presentation, and after that we'll have time for questions and answers. So the first is Stephanie Smith. Stephanie is a physician assistant student. She's graduating this Thursday, or next Thursday, right? Her interest in women's wellness research began during her undergraduate education at Penn State University, where she participated in research on the impact of physical activity on gestational diabetes. During her physician assistant education, she was selected as the 2012 Paul Ambroser Scholar, for which she completed a research project with the Homeless Initiative that aimed to promote physical activity and healthy lifestyle for choices for women living in homeless shelters. Nice. She continued this research for her physician assistant graduate project and will be presenting this project today. And a special acknowledgement to Charles Stream, who's her graduate advisor on this project. Our second presenter is Allison Insley. Alanson graduated from the Carnegie Mellon University in 2012 with an undergraduate degree in global studies and a double minor in Hispanic studies and international relations and politics. Now she is working full-time and also pursuing a Master's of Public Health with a concentration in environmental and occupational health, and she is conducting her community-based master's program at the Clean Air Council. So please let me welcome Stephanie to be the first presenter. Stephanie.
Thank you, Dr. Auth. So Dr. Auth did a great job of introducing me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the graduate project that I did. And so I'll start with a little bit of background. Like he said, I did undergraduate research at Penn State, working with women's wellness, specifically with gestational diabetes and the impact physical activity has on gestational diabetes and pregnancy. So as I sort of tried to develop my graduate project at Drexel, I was thinking about my interest in women's wellness and trying to think about what the Philadelphia community could benefit from. And coming from Central PA, from Penn State to Philadelphia, the homelessness was the first thing that I noticed in the city as I started physician assistant school, and the overwhelming number of homeless individuals. When I started working with the Homeless Health Initiative, I learned that there's, on any given day in Philadelphia, over 4,000 homeless individuals. So it was definitely a need that was present in Philadelphia, and need for health interventions, healthy lifestyle interventions in this population. So looking at the research that had already been done, I learned that there's a higher prevalence of obesity in people of low socioeconomic status, in women, and in minorities. Many low-income mothers feel that they can't afford healthy food options and afford to live healthy lifestyles, nor do they have the adequate nutrition knowledge and knowledge about exercise to prepare healthy meals and partake in the healthy lifestyle choices. Also, financial restrictions have limited their ability to live healthy lifestyles. Research has shown that most homeless families buy refined foods and foods that are higher in sugar and higher in fat. The stress of motherhood and the stress of living in a homeless environment is also something that hinders their ability to live healthy lifestyles, leading to decreased physical activity and poor nutrition choices. Women who are able to maintain healthy lifestyles, research has shown, are also able to help their children and their families maintain healthy lifestyles. So that was also a focus of this project, sort of trying to transition the health of the mother to the health of their children while they're living in the homeless environment. And research has also shown that mothers who increase physical activity and reduce fast food consumption, reduce caloric intake, reduce fat intake, and reduce the intake of sweetened beverages, are able to help their children live healthier lifestyles. Let's see. So other research, Clark was one of the leading researchers in this, that showed mothers are role models and have a huge opportunity to serve as positive agents of change for their children. But lack of knowledge about exercise and nutrition often sort of hinders that. Nutrition gets a little tricky because in a homeless environment, usually the cafeterias and the shelters are the ones that are serving food to the women and children or the families living in the shelter. So that sort of suggests that policies at the policy level might need to be changed a little bit to be able to serve healthier food. But the idea of the homeless shelters that people will transition out of homelessness and move to transitional housing and so on. So there's still a need for nutrition interventions because people will be able to learn about nutrition and then take that with them as they transition out of the shelter environment. And additionally, the most effective health promotion programs involve structured group sessions, and that's been proven with various research showing that the social support in homelessness is key in transitioning out of homelessness and using the structured environment. So we use that in the research as well. So a little bit about the group that I worked with, taking all the research in mind. I came across the Homeless Health Initiative and was able to partner up with them. It's a volunteer outreach program directed by CHOP's Community Education Department. And HHI is a program that encourages healthy lifestyle choices for children living in shelters. It was actually started in 1988 by some residents at CHOP. And the residents initially was focused on giving medical services to children living in shelters, free medical services, and now they do medical services, dental services. They help families gain health insurance and specialty care when needed. So they've really expanded a lot, and they have a few different programs that they provide for the shelters. They work at 3 shelters in the city. And the main program they had when I started with them was the SPARK program, the Safe Physical Activity and Recreation for Kids program. So it was weekly sessions for the kids to learn about exercise, do fun activities just to get them moving, and learn about nutrition as well. And we sort of found that the kids were going to the mothers that they were living, the mothers in the shelters, and teaching them about the nutrition that they were learning and teaching them about exercise. So there was a gap between providing the education for children and for the mothers as well. So we focused on creating this women's wellness program that focused on nutrition and fitness for mothers living in the shelters. And all the shelters that HHI works with are shelters for women and children. So we address the need for healthy interventions for women. So the purpose of the program, some of our objectives were to encourage mothers to make healthy choices in their current environment, use structured group sessions to make physical activity more accessible and provide a social support system for the women, and overall to lessen some of the obstacles that homeless women face to maintaining healthy lifestyles, and empower them to make healthier lifestyle choices, and then subsequently improve the health of children living in homelessness as well. So what we did with the Women's Wellness Program was similar to the SPARK program that HHI already had through Operation Choices, was start hour-long sessions for just the mothers. And they'd be in the afternoon when the kids were usually in school, and they would involve nutrition education, relaxation techniques, physical activity for 1 hour each week. And it was voluntary for participants to come. And the sessions we just were doing at one shelter at PEC, which is a shelter up in West Philadelphia. And to study the effects of the program, we distributed surveys for 3 months at each session, so it was May, June, and July of this year, just to assess 2 major elements of readiness to change. So assessing priority and their confidence or their ability to change their physical activity and diet habits. So this is, it's probably kind of small, the survey that we distributed, so I'll just go over it quickly. The first, just 6 simple questions, and the first one was just where they thought they would be in the next 30 days, if they thought they would still be living in the shelter environment or transitioning out to transitional housing, permanent housing, or living with family and friends. And then the next questions were based on their level of agreement, whether they strongly disagreed to strongly agreed with the statement. Over the next 30 days, priority to change my family's eating habits. Over the next 30 days, I think I can change my family's eating habits, so to judge their ability and confidence. And then it's a priority for me to increase my family's amount of physical activity, and I think I can increase my family's amount of physical activity. And then the last question, participating in this program has helped me and my family learn how to make healthier choices about food and about physical activity. So that was the survey portion of the study, and then we also we analyzed the survey to reveal trends in readiness to change, and we did structured focus groups at the end of the survey study. So in July, we did focus groups to look at qualitative data and just sort of to discuss with the women their experiences coming to the sessions. The focus group interviews, we asked 4 main questions, tried to keep them open-ended and open for discussion. So the questions we asked them were, why did they want to participate in the program? How has the program changed the way that you think about food and exercise? And what lifestyle changes have you made since participating in the program? And lastly, how has the program helped you feel more able to make healthy changes for you and your family? So our results, and this is a picture of one of the sessions we did. Women were always requesting to do different things. This was, I think, Zumba. They loved the Zumba the most. And then we did some like yoga and Pilates. On nice days, we'd just all go walking together in a big group. And then we do some where we would prepare healthy meals together and do nutrition education as we did the meals. So we tried to alternate between doing like an hour-long session focusing more on physical activity, and then the next week we would do more nutrition education. But we had 60 women complete surveys over the 3-month period, with some overlap, as just whoever was there that day would complete the survey. And 45 women said that it was a priority to increase physical activity. 44 said they felt able to change physical activity, and then we had similar numbers for our eating habits as well. So we have some graphs to show. So this is just showing the readiness to change physical activities. Like I said, 45 and 44 showed that it was a priority and they felt capable of changing their physical activity. The purple bar here being their priority to change physical activity, and the yellow bars their ability or their confidence to change. So the majority of them showed that they felt capable and prioritized it. And then we had very similar statistics for the diet. 44 said that they felt it was a priority to change their eating habits, and 45 said they felt capable of changing their eating habits. Results from our focus group showed we had 21 women participate in the structured focus groups, and changes in thinking just overall were that they increased their knowledge and awareness of healthy food choices and of physical activity options. Some quotes from women up here: that healthy foods can taste good, exercise can be fun. Now they know how to make healthier food choices in the shelter, even with cafeterias food, and healthy choices as they transition out of the shelter. And some behavior changes that the women reported were increasing their fruits, vegetables, and water, learning how to do exercise in the shelter that didn't require them spending any money, exercising with their children or exercising with the other women in the shelter. Reading labels at the grocery store. We did one day where we went to a store and just focused on reading labels and what were good things in the label or bad things, what they should be looking for, and how they could change their shopping habits as they transition into transitional housing. Sauteing foods instead of frying foods, lots of things. So it was a really positive experience doing the focus groups. So conclusions, just overall, the women showed that that exercise was a priority for them, and nutrition was a priority, and they felt able to make these changes in their lifestyles. Also, that they gained a social support system through the group environment, And that was pretty evident as we went through each session that they were gaining support from the group environment, and they talked about things that they did together outside of our sessions, exercising and nutrition. They were always proud to report what they had done in the week before, so that was positive. And overall, just that the program really helped empower homeless women in the PEC shelter to make positive lifestyle changes for themselves and for their children. Some limitations of the study were that we really didn't know the baseline level of motivation to change. So in future studies like this, with this specific project, doing a pre and post survey study to see where they were before they started the program, whether they were already motivated to make these changes and whether it was already a priority or not. And also just doing a dose response study to see if the more sessions they attended affected their ability to change more versus people that attended fewer sessions. If they were the ones that felt it wasn't a priority, they weren't able to make the changes. So those were two things that we could do in the future as we continue to work with this study. But here's some references for you. Does anyone have any questions?
We're actually going to have Allison present, then we'll do questions as a group. Okay, does that work, guys?
Came up.
Alright, so I'm going to be presenting today on the environmental health impacts of chemical manufacturing in the river wards. And my name is Allison Insley, in case you missed the introduction. But environmental justice is defined by the EPA as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. The river wards are a neighborhood in northeastern Philadelphia, right there. And they are defined by the EPA as an environmental justice zone because they're largely low income and are 30% minority. The river wards, they're a collection of neighborhoods, Fishtown, Kensington, East Kensington, Old Richmond, Port Richmond, and Bridesburg. Here's a map. You can sort of see that environmental justice is an issue around Philadelphia. This is a map of census tracts based on the percent of individuals living there that are below the poverty level. And these are a combination of toxic release inventory facilities, facilities that report that they emit greenhouse gases, and also national priority list Superfund sites, so current sites around the city that were deemed to have environmental pollutants that need to be cleaned up. So you can see like with there's like a more concentrated areas of like the lower income, so like in here, up in Northeast Philly, like around the river wards, and then down in South Philly. You can see the kind of interplay between the presence of these facilities and low-income individuals. So the Clean Air Council is the site that I'm doing my master's work at, and they're a member-supported nonprofit organization that operates in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Their mission is to protect and defend everyone's right to breathe clean air. And in trying to achieve that mission, they work in a couple different divisions, including outdoor air, energy, transportation, waste to recycling, indoor air quality, global warming, and environmental health, which is the division that I work in. And one of the things that they've been doing in the past few years within this environmental health program is work in the river wards to identify different issues that the community sees as affecting their air quality. And so they've been looking in river wards particularly at things like black carbon and particulate matter, and now they're transferring into looking at issues just surrounding toxic hazards in general for more like site-specific areas. And they were recently awarded an EPA Environmental Justice small grant to do this work. So in terms of the River Wards Environmental Justice Project, they are working under the Clean Air Act, Section 103(b)(3), which is to conduct research related to the causes, effects, extent, prevention, and the control of air pollution. So the three objectives of their grant are to conduct these community workshops that address toxic hazards, and then use these workshops to develop a community proposed policy solution using existing tools. Particularly, I've been helping out with this, looking at just prior examples of environmental justice, particularly in California. They're really working on these environmental justice zones and trying to develop community policy to correct for these. And then finally drafting a policy recommendation using the workshops and the community solution that the Clean Air Council is going to disseminate to key stakeholders and policymakers in the area. So the 3 neighborhoods that the Clean Air Council is working with on this project are Bridesburg, Port Richmond, and Kensington. And we started talking with them about what they see as key issues in the area. And Bridesburg is concerned about facilities, including the Honeywell Frankfurt and Resins and Chemicals facility. Port Richmond is worried about the Philadelphia Coke Company site, which is a current brownfield. And then Kensington's worried about their scrapyards. So I actually stayed at the Clean Air Council. I did my first year project there for practicum, and then decided to stay on for my CFUM. And in doing so, really had the good fortune to be able to develop my own project and look at tools that I sort of wanted to graduate with and that I was interested in learning how to use. So for my project, I chose that I wanted to assess emissions from the Honeywell Resins and Chemicals facility and relate these back to public health. And in order to do that, I'll be conducting a human health risk assessment and then the dispersion modeling of the pollutants being emitted from the facility, and then relate these back to the Clean Air Council's grant and communicate that to Bridesburg residents and just the Clean Air Council in general. So the Honeywell Resins and Chemicals facility is a 53-acre facility in Bridesburg. I don't know if any of you really spend a lot of time driving on 95 up in that area, but you can see it like right off of, if you're driving on 95 south, it's like right off the side of the road. It's been in operation since 1884 under various owners. Most recently, it was owned by Sunoco. And they work in the manufacture of phenol, acetone, and alpha-methylstyrene, mainly from the raw material cumene for the use in the manufacture of polymers, fibers, and resins. And they're actually one of the largest producers of phenol in North America. So in 1990, they were issued a Resource Conservation and Recovery Act permit for corrective action due to the concern of environmental hazards from the facility. And in order to deal with these corrective actions, they're looking at possible contamination of volatile organic compounds, semi-volatile organic compounds, and metals, and pollution of groundwater, indoor air, surface soil, surface water, and sediment, but outdoor air wasn't really assessed in this, so that's something that I wanted to look at. And the main contaminants that they're worried about just in the pollution in general include solvents, benzene, naphthalene, acetone, O-cresol, methyl ethyl ketone, xylene, styrene, phenol, and cumene. So here's a map of, this is Bridesburg, that's outlined in the black line, and then the location of the Honeywell facility, and this is population density, so you can sort of get an idea of the amount of people that could be potentially affected by this. So I'm looking at the possible risk to individuals living in the area within a 2-kilometer radius. And then that's just an aerial shot of the facility. So the first step in my project is going to be a human health risk assessment, which is really where I'm at now. So I'm looking at chronic, non-cancer, and cancer risk in the area. The chemicals that I identified as causing the most adverse health outcomes are acetaldehyde, cumene, ethylbenzene, formaldehyde, and phenol. And you can see that they cause a number of respiratory issues, eye, skin problems, central nervous system issues, and then also acetaldehyde, formaldehyde, and phenol have like major organ system damage, including cancer incidents. So here's just a chart showing the chemicals that I'm looking at, the releases that they report to the toxic release inventory, and then different threshold limits, and this is the dose response status, the reference concentration, and then the no observed adverse effect level is what I'll be comparing my findings to. And then after this, I'll be doing a dispersion modeling of the facility. So I'm conducting a Gaussian plume dispersion model of emissions for the facility for residents living within 2 kilometers. And then I'll be applying the modeling and the risk assessment to community demographics. So in Philadelphia, there is increased asthma compared to the national average. I'm also going to be applying the risk assessment calculation to various age demographics, and also based on the amount of time that different residents have been residing in the facility, since that would either increase or decrease risk in the area. And then also just the fact that Bridesburg, Port Richmond, Kensington, the entire River Woods area has historically been very heavy in industry. So you have to look at factors such as the cumulative impact of all of these. And then in conclusion, I'll be communicating my findings to the River Woods community as part of the community workshops, like I said, comparing my human health risk assessment values to EPA actionable levels for the potential need for increased control measures by the facility. And then finally, using my findings to inform the policy drafting that will be the final deliverable for the EJ grant.
I'm going to put some chairs up there. If you guys would sit up here and we can answer the questions. There you go. I got that for you.
You guys do that. Thank you.
So who would like to open up for questions? Go ahead.
Hi, I have a question for Stephanie. I work at a shelter, it's a men's shelter, but how would you suggest that shelters themselves change the nutritional habits that they have? Because we're having a problem because, I mean, we have a lot of guys and they need meat, but it's so expensive to get donated and things like that. So how would you suggest things like that?
Yeah, that's a problem that they were having at the shelter that I was working at as well. They did, I think it's tough, I'm not really sure right now. I mean, they brought in a new cook or a chef for the cafeteria and tried to do that, but then a lot of the residents were complaining because they didn't like the way the food tasted because they weren't used to like food without as much salt or food without, so it was sort of this balance. They were trying to implement that, and then the chef had to leave, so it's sort of this, that was like one way that they were trying to address it, and bring in someone that was willing to use what they had to make as healthy options as possible. But I don't know, I think it's hard right now. They're sort of in the same struggle as how can we do that, and I mean, they have some healthy options, but it's up to the people going to the cafeterias to choose those. So I don't know, I think it's tough right now, I'm not sure.
Stephanie, I'm curious to know how you recruited participants in the study. If it's one center or multi-women's homeless center?
Yeah, it was just at one of the shelters, and it was a shelter that HHI, the Homeless Health Initiative, is already really involved with. So it was helpful that they were a huge help with this. They already had sessions going with a lot of the children, and during the day while the kids are in school, the women are required to do things during certain hours of the day. So this was offered on Wednesdays from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and it was voluntary for them to come to this option, but they were already there in the shelter, and if they weren't working, this was a good option for them, or coming over their lunch hour. So they were already in the shelter. It was just the one shelter with the organization.
Derek and then Megan.
A question for Stephanie as well about the physical activity classes. I'm just curious who you recruited to lead those.
Well, I've been teaching group exercise classes
Okay.
for like 6 or 7 years now, so that was a convenient way to get it started. And then some of the things were easy too, like going for group walks was, no one really needed to lead that. And they actually really liked, some of them requested, one of the social workers had the Insanity DVDs, so they wanted to try that, so we like did the DVDs. And there was a kickboxing, I can't remember what it was called, Turbo something. It was a kickboxing DVD, so we tried that too. So if you didn't have anyone to lead sessions, you could also try DVDs. And then have Zumba DVDs and all that kind of stuff. But if we did like physical activity sessions led by an instructor, I usually did them. And there was another social worker that taught yoga, so she would do that as
Did
well.
they respond pretty well to the variety of activities?
Yeah, they didn't, after we tried Insanity, they didn't really like it, so we only did that a couple times. But they did like the variety, and we would ask them if there were certain things that they liked the best and whatever the majority liked. We would try to do that one more frequently, so that they would look forward to coming. But we sort of tested a bunch of different things out and tried to stick with things that they responded well to.
Okay.
My question kind of relates actually. I was just wondering if you worked with an interdisciplinary team to create these sessions for the women?
I mostly worked with the social workers.
Okay.
And then they had some social work students that were there as well, and various volunteers that were volunteering with the children's programs were also started volunteering with this as well. So we had different people in and out, but there were usually maybe only 2 or 3 volunteers at each session, and maybe between like 6 and 10 women that would come each time, depending on, I mean, the number of women in the shelter would vary week to week, so depending on how many were there.
Thank you.
Was there a question in the back there? Oh, Ellen?
A little bit related to that, Stephanie, I assume that your project is finished and you're no longer going to the shelter to do this?
They're still doing the sessions. This, unfortunately, with my clinical rotation hours, this past like 2 months, I wasn't able to go to any of the sessions. But if I stay in Philadelphia, I'm hoping to be able to start attending all the sessions again. But the past couple months, I have not.
Because I was going to ask, did the shelter put anything in place to continue it in your absence?
Yeah, the social workers are still going and running the sessions each week, and the volunteers. So they're still going, which is great.
Great.
Adrian?
Comment and a question, Stephanie. I loved your project, and I'm really proud of the work that you did. But Allison, I have a question for you. I assume that people who work in the plants that you addressed might also live in the neighborhood. So can you account for that when you survey who has had higher incidences of illness in the area if they are working at the plant, or if the people who do work there have higher incidences of illness?
Well, so the way that I'm going to be calculating risk, I'm looking at 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But the concentrations that I'm using are what they report to the EPA is what they emit, as opposed to going into the facility and taking the measurements myself. So I can't really look at whether or not the concentrations inside the facility would be similar to what they would be outside, which I would assume that they would be higher. But I think the occupational risk is typically higher than environmental risk, especially if you are exposed to something at higher levels for 8 hours and you go out and you don't have, give your body the time to really like recover for the other, like whatever, 16 hours of the day. Yeah. Don't do the math in my head.
I can make the calculations, I'm not on the spot.
Yeah, so I think that would be really interesting to look into the occupational risk as opposed to just the environmental risk, depending on the findings that I get.
Yeah,
from
higher
this.
environmental risk of the people that work.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting to look at.
Allison, you had several different populations that you could assess, correct?
Yeah.
Why did you choose Honeywell?
So I looked at I actually did look at the Philadelphia Coke site, a couple other places. I really wanted to look at something that is currently in operation where the Philly Coke isn't anymore. And then I made a pretty long list of stuff, looked at the different pollutants that were being emitted, for just things that I could find consistent data on, so that my calculations were all the same. And then just a number of pollutants that were all in significant quantities that I knew could cause serious health effects.
In those pollutants that you're assessing from Honeywell, do you find any of those pollutants in combustions of cars or, in the community itself that you have to take into account?
Yeah, the BTEX compounds, so like the benzene, toluene, xylene, those ones would all be an issue with the cars. As in addition, the particulate matter is a really big issue when it comes to them living right off of 95.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the Clean Air Council projects before mine was they did an environmental toxics tour, so they actually wore individual particulate sensors and walked around different areas, like around 95, walked past a couple different
Sure.
emission facilities, trying to look at different spikes, and that was like sort of like that project ended in May, and then the community just felt that they wanted to switch to looking at toxic hazards as opposed to just particulate matter.
Allison, I wondered how long it would be until you finish your project, and does the weather have anything to do with the environment and those kinds of data that you'll be collecting?
So I graduate in June, so my project will
You
be
finish
done.
in June.
Yes, so finish in June. Yeah. But in terms of the weather, that does really play a big factor in it. I'm taking, for the dispersion modeling, I'm taking all my atmospheric data from NOAA site at the Northeast Philly Airport. And I'm using Winrose. I don't know if you're familiar with Winrose at all, but it's a software program that takes into account the frequency and the duration of wind speeds, and it'll factor that in. So that's like the biggest factor that'll go into changing the exposure.
Happy.
Listen, I just want to verify, it's EPA who does the collection, the sampling of areas, where there might be concentrations of the pollutants?
Yeah, the EPA monitors ambient air concentrations, but they don't look at site-specific things. But the data that I'm using is EPA data that Honeywell is reporting to the EPA as part of their Title V permit because of the amount that they emit.
So it's not like an active collection of samples?
No, this is annual self-reported data.
Thank you.
I have a question for Stephanie.
Sure, go ahead.
I know it wasn't part of your research, but, and it'll probably be anecdotal, but did you find in your interaction with the women or in discussion with social workers that there was an improvement in like mental health stuff, like maybe lifting of like depression or less anxiety by participating in your weekly exercise?
Yeah, there were some circumstances where we did some like meditation and relaxation techniques or things that they could have used in stressful situations, and talked about when would be appropriate times to use relaxation techniques, and they would come back and say that, like anecdotally, like you said, that I did my deep breathing, or I did this when a certain situation occurred. And so I feel like with stressful situations or anxiety, that would help. I'm not sure about any other mental health issues, but those are some that they reported to us.
Just a quick question for you, Stephanie. Since you've done the groundwork now for the shelter that you worked at with getting women excited about working out a little bit more and eating healthier, I actually had a minor in public health in undergrad, and I'd be interested in continuing some sort of research going into my senior year. Would you have any recommendations on the information that you've gained now and what you think would benefit them to further the program and get it more established in possibly other shelters?
Yeah, I think expanding to the other shelters, because the homeless health initiative is at least with 3 shelters, and then even expanding it to other shelters would be really beneficial. You said you're at a men's shelter. I think any shelter could benefit from it. I think with this organization, the next steps would be to move it to the other shelters, and since it's already been well established at the one, it shouldn't be as difficult to move it within this organization, and then maybe take what the sort of model that they've used and implement it in other shelters. I'm not really as familiar with the organization of other shelters, but I can speak for these, and I think that would be the next step, to expand it to other shelters. And I mean, it's been working very smoothly at this one, especially since there were already programs established for the children. We could just sort of transition into programs with women. So if there's already specific programs established, almost making it an adjunct of what's already there, instead of trying to start something brand new that's not known. I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you.
Allison, once your project is done, you're going to be meeting with the community.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about how you see that unfolding, that community outreach?
So the community component of the project is I think right now we're thinking monthly meetings with each of the individual communities, as opposed to bringing them all together, because they don't really identify well with each other and they're very different demographics. But I would imagine it's probably gonna have something to do with sort of informing them about the EPA reporting system and that they can go online and look up all this data on their own. And then just communicating to them the risk that they're getting from this facility and like if this is a concern to them, if it's not a concern, if they would be interested in me like repeating the modeling for other facilities, because once I have everything programmed, it's pretty easy just to apply to different parameters. And then just really hopefully giving them an idea of what they're exposed to, like how this could be playing into their life. Like I know just even from the interactions that I've had with them now, like you bring up asthma and anybody will say, oh, my kid has asthma, I have asthma, just are like really receptive to the fact that we recognize that they have an issue and that like, they are interested in really addressing it.
It's going to be an exciting meeting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Megan.
Allison, this may not be part of your project, but just thinking about what Adrian said in terms of the occupational risk. Do these chemicals, are they transmitted, through clothes and things like that these workers are working all day in the facility and then bringing them, do they track them like into their homes and things like that? Do you know, or?
I would, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what kind of like personal protective equipment that they're required to wear while they're working, so that would influence the amount that they would be taking home with them or absorbing through their skin while they're working. But with them being volatile compounds, yeah, they could definitely get through clothes.
It would also be interesting if it is on their clothes, if anybody in the family is being exposed to them, if they don't change their clothes from the workplace, and they change them at the home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does Honeywell, what's Honeywell's role in this? They're just an observer?
Yeah, they're just an observer at this point. I guess, depending on what I would find, they might be interested in hearing what it is. It's funny, like on their website, just going on and looking at their materials, like the data sheets and stuff like that, like they promote themselves as a health conscious and community conscious organization. But yeah, as of now, they have no role in the project.
Well, in the few minutes we have left, we'd love to hear from you on what you'd like to see the outcome from your project, the lasting outcome on the community. So Allison, can we start with you and then go to you, Stephanie?
Sure. I guess I would be excited to see, my findings, I would hope that the quantities or the risk isn't substantial, but if it is, I would hope that the community would take a proactive role in trying to change the facilities, even as tough as it is to work from the bottom up in these kinds of situations. But I know the Clean Air Council, I trust that they would guide them along the way to drafting policy solutions and really trying to lobby for the community's health.
That's great, thank you. Thanks, Allison. Stephanie?
I guess from this, I would hope that, like you were saying, it would expand to other shelters, and that women would keep benefiting from this and taking healthy lifestyle choices and helping to affect their children and affect their families living in the homeless environment and taking it with them as they transition out. But I would hope that it expands to other shelters and sort of picks up.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. I think it's a complex question.
Make maybe like 10% of people Stephanie had really presentation. Derek,
I'm really enjoying it.
dude, you know Lauren, you're an expert. Because I taught
Good job.
yeah, because she mentioned somebody, she mentioned Stephanie last week.
Yeah, I know. I
Right, I was
what my rotation hours are?
every Saturday.
That was supposed to be from our thing. Yeah, that was hard too.
Yeah, it's hard to but it's so great that we're able to. You know, I was kind of thinking along the same lines, because I mean, I would love to do something where I integrate nutrition, physical activity, and healthcare, because I have a background in nutrition too. I did a master's program. I've always been curious about how nutrition works at the home community, because they don't really have any say as to where the meals come from. They're just like so hungry.
And with this looking into like she was asking about the practitioners, that's like something that really struggles with right now because they get food meals. So it's like whatever they get, what they eat. Yeah, and thanks for coming. Yes. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. That definitely is going to need to be addressed.
Okay, right, so then,
And sort of change policies about like how they feel like eating well,
okay, because I'm gonna grab my bag and I'm gonna leave.
implementing any changes.
Okay, we should probably do that.
So you think that that's probably the biggest challenge is the actual food?
Yeah.
It wasn't that the